Hello my beautiful people and welcome back to my channel, or hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Kaylee. We talk about all sorts of things here, from lifestyle, being a student, and a lot of my engineering journey. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Because if you are an engineering student, you probably are aware that it is time for the internships to open. So I thought, as someone who has finished my 800 hours and also had quite a successful run, I would say, with internships and then securing a grad role and things, I just thought we could do a little sit down chatty video of my tips and tricks in getting an engineering internship. And I guess technically any job or internship as well. Just some of the things I found kind of from that transition to high school and university jobs and things to, I guess, your big girl job. So I'm going to split it into a couple of different sections. So there'll be timestamps. So if you need to skip to something specific for you, feel free to. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this video. Okay, so section 1 is going to be on the application phase. So I have my computer here. I've written a bunch of notes of some things that I want to talk about, because this is kind of your first impression, and I think the thing that people find the hardest to get past and actually get those interviews and then get the job. Also, don't mind Luna, she's just going to be hanging out here, making some biscuits and chewing on her little frog. It's actually quite adorable. They both her and Lily do it because it's like I think it's a comfort thing, like kids suck on their thumb. Anyway, not important. Okay, so the first thing in this section we're going to talk about is your CV, your resume, and I think this is where so many people go wrong. And I have had the opportunity to talk to my talent manager from my company about this, because we've done a few expos together. So this is stuff that I've learned, but also things she's told me as someone who works in the business and actually does the hiring. Your CV is not supposed to be your life story. We do not need to hear everything you've ever done in your entire life. I think people forget that it needs to be relevant to the job that you're actually applying for. You obviously want to put work that you've done on the CV. Even for something like an engineering internship, you won't feel that everything is necessarily super relevant, but they do want to see that you've had a job before. Because even though you will not be likely to have had engineering experience or any, of these adult big girl jobs experience, but you need to show that you've had a job. I would definitely say that's probably one of my number one tips before even thinking about applying for an internship. If you have never had a job, never had a part-time job, never worked before, you're unlikely to get the job. If you're in your early 20s and you have never had a job, and I understand with studying it can be hard, but get a job over the summer, get something, you need to do that. But that is like my number one tip. If you don't take anything else away, that's work ethic. You've got to learn that from doing. I guess the other big things with your CV is do focus on the skills that are relevant, and you can take those from your courses even if you don't necessarily have experience outside of that. If you did coding in one of your courses, talk about what coding languages you used, and how proficient you are in them and things like that. Talk about maybe a project you did at uni. What was the project about? What was your role in the team? What did you learn? Things like that can all be really helpful. Keep your CV short, sweet, to the point. They also want to see other things because your qualifications are such a small part when it comes to an internship, because other people are going to be more qualified than you. They're expecting to hire someone with less skills, but they want to see that you have the ability to work in a team, that maybe you've had some leadership opportunities, that you play sport, that you're in a cultural group, just something else that makes you a whole person that can kind of bring something different to the company. Now, your cover letter is similar to your CV in the sense of you want it to obviously outline some of your experience, but you need your cover letter to read as you. Especially nowadays with all the AI and stuff, they can tell. If you send in a cover letter that is so obviously ChatGPT the entire thing, it's not going to show any personality and they are going to discard it immediately. Like, that is the biggest thing that my talent advisor and all of that said, is she said if she reads it and it reads so obviously like AI, she's just going to throw the application out. Like, it's just not even going to bother to look at it. Also, you need to cater your cover letter to the job. Talk about why you want to work for the company. Do a little bit of research. Obviously, you don't need to be a big know-it-all and know everything, but what do you align with? You know, what are your company's values and why they relate to your life? Or maybe a project you did at uni you really loved and you found the project that they did, obviously on a much greater scale, you know, has some of the same aspects and you really want to be able to build on that part of your knowledge and your interests. I'm going to touch a little bit just on emails and kind of like cold calling in a way. Some people think that this is not like great, and I think it can be. I personally emailed before the applications even opened, and I was lucky enough to get an interview and go through the process early, which was really great. You can cold email companies. The biggest thing is you need to make sure it seems genuine and not just that you're copy and pasting it and sending them to everyone. And I guess also you have to be expecting almost the no. A lot of the time they either won't get back to you or they'll just say wait till the application date. But there's no harm in trying. That's what I would always say. Kind of adding on to that is how to find internships. And now this I also know can be difficult, but unfortunately you might just have to put in the hard yards. Obviously things like you're going to have expos at your university, so you'll get to see companies and see them there. There's also going to usually be ones advertised. I know my university will send out emails when certain ones are open, but sometimes those are only like the big ones and the main ones and usually the most competitive ones. So you are going to have to go on Trade Me, on LinkedIn, on Google, look it up, and you might have to do a little bit of that research on your own. And that's just part of being an adult and making sure you get what you want in your life, correct? Now, LinkedIn is an interesting one. This is definitely something that's like more on the rise. I would personally say my LinkedIn is not amazing. I have some things on there, and definitely you can't go wrong by posting on it as long as you are posting professional and positive things that are like relevant to the jobs you want to get into. It's definitely not something that's like a must, but companies will usually have a little bit of a look. And that just goes for all social media in general. Just you've got to think about the person you're putting out on the internet, because companies will look. Companies will look and see where you are on the internet, and if you think you can't be found, unfortunately that's not the case. So you just want to like make sure the version of yourself you're putting out online is something that you be proud of and that a company would also be proud to associate with. Now, just to wrap up this first section of the applications, I just want to say probably my top things of not to say in email, CVs, LinkedIn, cover letters, etc. Do not just say things like I have no experience or I have to do this for uni to get my hours. I was told to apply for this one. You know, I'm just trying all of them. Just even though you might have to do it for uni, which for some degrees we do have to do these placements, don't say that. Literally, why would you do that? You're shooting yourself in the foot. A job is a job, obviously, and there is an aspect of need rather than want, but just act like you care a little bit. And it will really come across. Also, I guess just make sure you're marketing yourself in a way that's obviously not lying and saying you have heaps of experience, but just saying you have none. Sell yourself a little bit. Have confidence in your ability, because you do have something to bring to the table, even if you think it is something small. Now, for section 2, we are going to talk about the interview. So you've sent in the application, you've got, the green light to move on to the next round, which is super exciting, and obviously maybe something you're not going to get for many companies. You might only get for one, you might not get it the first round. Do not stop applying. Always apply every year. Just want to say that before I move on. But if you are lucky enough and you do get the opportunity for an interview, here are some of my top tips to make sure you ace it and guarantee yourself that job. They are not expecting you to know everything. They know you are coming in as an intern, as someone who is going to be new to the company, new to the industry most likely. So do not go in there and be like, oh, I have the best grades in this. I know everything about this. I know all of this. Because you don't. Even if you are the top of your class, you are still going to be the bottom of the pecking order once you get into the real world. So definitely be confident in your skills, but don't go in being a know-it-all, because unfortunately you will not know it all. They're not testing you on how much you know, right? Most of the time they want to know, do you have the passion, and like, are you willing to work and willing to learn? So definitely focus on those things, the things you want to learn. Learn a little bit about the company before you go, right? Again, same with the don't be a know-it-all. There's no point going and be like, I know that your company was established in this year by these people and blah, blah, blah. Like, know a bit, but you don't need to like regurgitate that information because they know that information, right? They want to see who you are as a person as well. Like, they've already read all your information. So the interview is really a great time for you to show your personality and like your ability to communicate and think on the spot, rather than just, the writing, because they have already read the qualifications. And then I guess my bonus tip for acing an interview, other than just being yourself and being confident, have a few questions ready, because it's quite common for them to ask, do you have any questions for us? Ooh. So it's good to just have a pre-think about maybe some questions you have about the company, because this is a great opportunity to ask them, and it's completely fine to have questions. Obviously try not to make them too silly, but also practice your common interview questions. Like, sit down with a friend beforehand and practice, because they're going to ask some of the classic questions like, why do you want to work for us? Why do you think you'll be a good fit? Things like that. And you can definitely like talk to people who have maybe worked in the industry and things, and just kind of see what they want to ask. So definitely be prepared, but don't be robotic, I guess, is like the final takeaway for that section. Okay, section 3, we're just gonna quickly cover contracts and kind of managing your expectations when it comes to them. Obviously you should always read your contracts before you sign them. If they are really long, you can put them into an AI program to kind of get them to skim and let you know let you know what's important, so you're not getting yourself into a situation that you don't want to be in and that you've signed. However, in saying that, with an internship, you need to have realistic expectations. Obviously, with an internship, you are probably unlikely to be paid like very well. And I do think that obviously you need to still be being paid within your rights, based on your country and area and things like that. There are things with training wages, and I know nurses have to work for free, so definitely manage your expectations. You're not necessarily going to be on a super high salary or anything, because you are just learning. And even though you're in an industry such as engineering, which, has the opportunity to make a lot of money, you need to be realistic with the amount of money you're being expected. When you are an intern, you're learning, you can't provide as much as other people on site. And a lot of what you're going to be doing is just learning and like watching, I guess. And then the other thing on that, kind of with the contracts and just the expectation, is you are just starting. You are going to do crappy roles. You're going to have to go get coffee for people. You're going to have to do boring stuff. So you just need to be like a little bit prepared for that, and not expect to kind of go in there and run the show. Okay, now on to section 4, the internship itself. So congratulations, you have gone through the application, you aced the interview, you have read your contract, signed it, you're all ready. Now this is where it can make the most difference. You've put in all the hard work and you don't want to let that go to waste. So when it comes to your first day, this is your first real impression. You need to be on time. You need to make sure you've read whatever they sent you beforehand, make sure you're dressed appropriately, you bring everything you need, bring notebooks, bring whatever. If you're unsure, contact them beforehand. You do not want to turn up on the first day looking completely unprepared. Do not be late. I think being late at any point in your job is bad, but on your first day is just, it will be frowned upon. So please don't shoot yourself in the foot and be late. Genuinely look where you have to go beforehand, look at it on maps, see how long it's going to take you, and just leave earlier. You would rather get there half an hour earlier, sit in the car park, take a deep breath, have a little scroll on your phone, than be rushing and running late and then running into the office and not knowing where you are. It's just, you want to be starting that first day calm and also just ready to put your best foot forward. Communication is really important when you're learning. If you don't understand, you need to ask questions. You need to be willing to put your hand up and ask for help, because if you just keep getting behind, what will end up happening is people might just see it as you not completing your tasks you were assigned, when in reality you're just unsure and you are learning, so that is okay. So definitely make sure you're communicating that. Have open communication with your managers, your supervisor. You might have a grad who's looking after you, so that they know where you're at, and also so you can kind of have that open communication of, what do you want from me? What do you expect from me? Then if you finish your task, you can like comfortably go to them and be like, hey, what would you like me to do next? Etc. Because you definitely don't want to be falling behind in tasks or not performing just because you're not willing to like ask those questions and make sure you're on the right track. And then finally on the internship itself is, you need to make the most of it. There are definitely good internships and bad internships. However, I don't think that is because of the company. I genuinely believe that is based on the effort you're willing to put in for the output you are going to get out of it. I have watched people at the exact same company as me not learn as much and not gain as much from the experience because they weren't willing to say yes to things, and put their foot forward, I guess put their hand up, because this is your chance to, one, prove yourself like to the company and potentially have the opportunity to come back for a grad role, come back for another summer, secure a job, but also you are actually using it to learn. You can't think of it as just your 800 hours you need to tick off. Like, you're working towards this as a career. So my main takeaway from that is, you've got to remember that your internship is a job, but it can also lead to the end goal and the end job. So you need to turn up from day one like you're going to be turning up for those grad roles, for those project manager positions, you know, for your promotions, all of those sorts of things. I hope this video was helpful, and definitely if you found it interesting, please let me know in the comments, because I do feel like I have a lot to share on this, and if you want me to talk more about one of these sections more in depth, I'd be willing to do that. However, thank you so much for watching, and if you are currently in the process of applying for internships and things like that, I wish you the best of luck. Like, feel free, if you want, chuck it in the comments what you're applying for, or like any questions you have, and I would definitely go on there and answer them to the best of my ability, or kind of point you where you might be able to find the correct answers. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you all being here and making it to the end of the video. So please, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button. I have just hit 100 subscribers, which is super exciting. I would really like to hit 500 in the next couple of months. So with all of that being said, goodbye, and I love you.